basically what we're saying is people have read the Bible, they've created beliefs out of what they've read out of the Bible, and if you take when this was written, the Bible, Jews were divorcing women all the time. And the first thing is that, because you talked about covenant, they would make a covenant with the parents. Parents would make covenant or stuff like that. Remember the story where he goes, sends the servant, says, go back and find my son a wife.
That's right.
He didn't say, find the wife that my son loves, or the woman who loves my son. He said, basically, go purchase a woman for marriage for my son. So women were assets, commodities. It wasn't based out of love. So they enter into this covenant, parent to parent, or man to parent, or stuff like that. It wasn't man to woman. And then men had the right almost for anything.
Yeah, women had no right to divorce. A woman could not divorce a man.
Right.
If he beat her down physically, she could not divorce him. And a lot of people don't realize that. They try to put the American culture, it don't fit. It doesn't compute. That's why we got the woman at the well called a harlot and a whore and a terrible woman because she'd been married 5 times. Well, what they don't know, apparently, is that woman never divorced anybody. She was put away 5 different times by her husband.
Different husbands.
And then in the latter portion, when Jesus encounters her, she's living with the 6th one. That Jesus did say that the one you're living with is not yours. He wasn't condemning her with that. He was just saying, I'm a prophet and I know about all your past, and I still love you. That's what he was saying. The people that read it through legalistic eyes is like he's bashing her. He's calling her a promiscuous woman. You got to understand, if she like that woman, if she'd been divorced 5 times by men who, like you said, had the right to walk up and say, I divorce thee. And
it was that easy.
It was that easy. Actually, from what I understand, they could say it 3 times, and that was illegal.
Wow.
And for frivolous things. And Jesus rebuked them for that. Moses talked about that. And so God's not saying it's just not a big deal, but you got to understand, during the Bible times when it was written, the women had no rights to divorce, and they had no rights at all, really. And you got to understand, they couldn't even sit on the same side of the sanctuary as men. They had their own place that they were relegated to sit. And it wasn't a position of honor. And that's why you see some of the confusion sometimes where a woman maybe didn't know all the procedures. She'd holler at her husband, what did he mean by that? And he would say, be quiet and let women learn at home. But that doesn't compute or fit into our culture, and we're not changing the Bible to make it fit. You just got to read the Bible in context. And when Paul's giving all the marriage advice and admonishing people not to marry and stay single and all that he's doing in 1 Corinthians, because the context was the church was under physical persecution, being driven out and killed and pursued, and it was just not a great time to be, caught up in marriage concerns and providing for a family. There was a crisis going on, and that's why Paul addressed that marriage like that, but not because he was saying this is how I feel about marriage.
That's interesting. Yeah, I've never heard that before. So basically he's saying because of this time that we're in of doom and gloom.
That's right.
Hey, that you have to provide for yourself, but you have to provide for her, and so in that should you get married? And that's what I'm saying. I mean, I think it's so great. I don't know how many other stories there are about divorce in the Bible, but definitely the one with the woman at the well where Jesus is talking to her. He never said, God is mad at you because you got a divorce.
Right.
Like you said, she was put away every time, not her leaving the husband. And we've talked about being probably because she was beautiful is why she got married so many times. And probably why she got put away so many times was because she was barren.
That's right. She couldn't have a child.
Right. So nothing of her own accord, and she gets divorced. And she gets divorced.
That's right.
And she gets divorced.
And that's like a video picture to me, though. In other words, I'm not saying everybody. I'm not saying like we're the smartest Bible folks around. But as a broad brushstroke, I'm telling you, the average Christian, if you mention the woman at the well, first thing they think about is a harlot, promiscuous, sinful, adultery, woman. You got to remember that in the Bible, that if you committed adultery and you were caught, you were stoned to death.
We see that example
with Jesus and with Joseph and Mary.
Right.
That's why Joseph desired to divorce Mary. That's what it means, put her away privately. That means divorce her. In the Jewish culture, he was a spouse to her, which was a legal contract, just like our being married. Even though they had consummated the marriage with physical relations, yet for him to get out of that, he had to divorce her. He had to put her away. And Joseph said, I'm going to put her away privately. Now, when Mary comes to him and tells him I'm pregnant, he didn't believe a word of it. He believed that she had slept with another man and gotten pregnant. And so he's going to divorce her. You know, we don't even imagine, it's hard to imagine the pain that she probably experienced, because this was a God thing in her life, and the closest person to her on the earth didn't believe her. Man, that's got to hurt. And so he's going to divorce her privately, lest she be stoned to death. He didn't want her to be executed, but he also didn't want to be married to her. And of course, God sent Gabriel privately to Joseph to clear all that up for him. And I always joke about wanting to check out the DVD when I get to heaven about Joseph's apology to Mary. You know, like, honey, I'll never doubt you again. You know, I'll believe anything you tell me. But that woman.
Well, when she has angels coming to confirm.
Yeah. But that woman at the well. So here's a woman. So it can't be like the church has taught, that she's an adulterous woman, because she would have already been executed, and that would have been the end of her. So here she is, she gets married, she can't divorce any man on her own, so she gets divorced. She's that victim of divorce. Again, it is my belief, I mean, you know, why marry an ugly woman? You know what I'm saying? I mean, here she got to be desirable. Men want her. So a second husband marries her, goes into covenant with her. Doesn't say how long, then he divorces her. Third man, fourth man, fifth man marries this woman, and then he divorces her. In the Jewish culture, it is so important to have children. And in that culture, it was perceived that if you could not have a child, then you were considered barren, but you were considered cursed by God. And so to keep their name going, they would have to marry a woman that could bear them a son to keep the line going. Very important to the Jewish culture. So to me, it's clear. She just was barren. And it's one thing to be divorced because you did something, okay? It's another thing to be divorced and you did nothing, and you were just rejected, because that's the real thing behind divorces. They have to deal with that feeling or the spirit, if you want to call it that, of rejection. They've been, somebody's rejected them in a big way. And so now there's no food stamps. There's no welfare system for her. She's been married 5 times. The Bible doesn't give us the details, but you got to be smart enough this is a real deal. So she's living with a man. Now let me tell you what the Bible don't say. It don't say she was having sex with a man. It don't say she was sleeping with a man. It don't say she was having intercourse with a man. It just says she was living with a man. Now, if you want to tell everybody that lives with somebody's having sex, then there you go. That's your dirty mind. But Jesus said the man you're living with is not your own. So maybe she's, what about this? Maybe she's living with that guy just to have 3 squares and a roof over her head. Maybe she's just trying to survive because what she's going through. And there Jesus encounters this woman at the well, and she goes there, sure, at noonday, because she's been divorced 5 times, and she knows that under the Jewish culture, the way the other women view her, they're not friendly to her probably. And so, but Jesus was. And he's not condemning her when he says the man you have now is not your own. He's just saying, I'm a prophet and I know everything about you and I still love you. How about that? And I think it's pretty cool that Jesus was the 7th man, the complete. And, and that's who that woman was. And we got a lot of people out here that's divorced, gone through divorce, that's in terrible situations where they're kind of like that woman. They're trapped. They didn't do anything, but now they're suffering because of it. Their husband, was a great provider. All of a sudden, he gets on drugs. He does this or that. He's not providing anymore. Now, what am I going to do with my kids? How am I going to provide? They come and took my car. What about you know?
Well, and